it's just Stephanie. Hello. Okay. Totally not prepared for the camera. But this is an important moment. The power of review. The power of review. I'm working on my book, and I was about to look for an alternate thing to work on. Sorry, my hand's going crazy. I was looking for an alternate thing to work on because I was getting so frustrated by the walls of vocabulary in this book, the just sheer amount of lists of vocabulary, and I feel like I'm never going to, I need to spend time with each word, and I need to spend time cementing them, practicing stroke order just for fun, not for writing necessarily, but it helps me cement the components of the words. I need to spend time in the meaning, I need to spend time in the pronunciation, I need to get deep and down and dirty with each one of them. And with each chapter, as you can see on this side is a bunch of words, here are the characters that make up those words, and then on the next, still the same chapter, this entire thing is words. And I know it's all backwards because I'm using the wrong phone to tape, because I didn't think I was going to record right now. I thought I was just going to study, but inevitably I should know that when I study, I want to process learning. So, which means I need to talk to you guys. The point is, even though those are backwards, you can still get an idea of how much vocabulary, and that's one chapter of 25. And there's still 2 more pages of grammar exercises, but those aren't new words. So there's a ton of vocabulary in each chapter, and I'm determined to do a chapter a week. How in depth for each chapter seems to be my current hang-up, which is why I wanted to throw both versions of the book, because I have 2, one that I cut up for note cards that I can't keep up with, and the other one for just actually studying, marking up, and using in its entirety. So the power of review is what I wanted to mention in this video, because as I was kicking and screaming thinking I needed to find a different source, I still really like this book a lot, but I'm really frustrated by the wall of vocabulary in each chapter and how to keep all of it fresh. And now that I know that the sentences don't build on each other, there's all kinds of things happening in my head, and so I kind of, as I was having that temper tantrum, I kind of pushed, sorry, I'm really tired, I kind of pushed myself aside and just started kind of looking at the previous chapters to see how much I could remember of them, and I could remember a fair amount, and there's a lot I didn't, but then my inquisitive side, thank goodness, took over, and I started to, yes, I'm recording. Sorry, I just started randomly doing a video without telling my husband. Anyway, sort of a weird thing to live with a YouTuber, I bet. Anyway, so I started looking through, and I started recognizing that I remembered quite a bit of it, and there's a lot I didn't, but then my inquisitive side took over, and I started to question some of the ones that looked familiar, some of the ones that I could remember, miraculously some of the ones that I could read the Hansa, remembering the pinyin and maybe the tones, and I got that part under my belt, so I started looking at the character more and kind of decomposing it just for fun, and then comparing it to some other things it might look like. So my inquisitive side kind of took over, and I kind of started looking through the past 3 chapters, doing that, and I picked out a couple of words that I knew I kept forgetting and that I wanted to remind myself of, so I started to mark those especially. I'm sucking at note cards in every way, shape, or form. I keep starting new ways of making note cards, and it's not working, which is why I've put all kinds of notes in this book, because it's the only thing I seem to keep coming back to on a regular basis. So some of the ones that I keep messing up, but that I really want to know, for example, when, with the 4th tone, the gates with the mouth in between it, is to ask, thus the mouth in between it. Shema, which is what, which I do know by sound, even if I can't say it correctly. But the characters themselves, I don't know, and I think because I know the sound, and I don't even have to think about the meaning, because that's one of the first words that I heard in Mandarin years and years and years and years ago. Funny enough, in the classroom, when I was teaching, my students would say that, although it was more like Sima than Shima, but whatever, both of them. I'm aware that the X and the S change regionally or per person or what have you, the sin and shin and whatever. Y'all can tell me it doesn't change. Not you guys, but people in general can tell me it doesn't change. It does. I hear lots of versions of the language, and it changes quite a bit, let me tell you. And Shema, Sima, that's one of them. Anyway, my tones are totally off, as is the norm. Another one is, where is it? I remember it's Zai, but I don't remember the tone, and for some reason I didn't circle it, but that's one that I wanted to circle. I like Z words for some reason. Z-A-I, there it is, in chapter 2. Oh, also a fourth tone. So apparently I don't like the angry words. Remember, fourth tone's kind of angry sometimes? This one isn't. Zai, zai, zai. Be at or in. That's not really an angry word, is it? It's got the earth component or radical and then some other stuff around it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, to be at or in. Anyway, that's the one I wanted to remember because that seemed like a pretty important word. So what happened is when I got over myself and went back to the previous chapters, instead of just feeling overwhelmed by what I was trying to work on, and that I've actually been learning this week, but it just doesn't feel like it because there's so much vocabulary there, and I'm not entirely sure how in-depth I can get with a week per chapter, but I feel like if I go slower, I lose motivation. So, power of review. What I have to remind myself is that every now and then, even every night, I can kind of flip through the previous chapters and kind of pick up a couple of other things that I didn't pick up before. I don't think it's good to go too far ahead, which I kind of started to do at the beginning of the lesson because I was looking to see how useful this book is. It's useful. We know that. Just trudge forward. Trust, and move forward. And the power of review. I have to keep going back to the old stuff, not just to cement it, but to remind myself that it is working. Am I going to absorb all, like, oh gosh, 30 characters, 20 words, and 30 words, which is like 60 words a lesson, plus all the characters that are composed of no, I'm not. But with the review, I think a lot more of them will be cemented in. So I have to look at this, I think here's the lesson, I have to look at this as the chapter that I'm in. It's perfectly okay and even really wanted for me to go back and forth up to the chapter that I'm in. Not to go ahead too much, although it's fine to take a peek. It's not that big a deal. I just don't want it to overwhelm me like it did tonight. I feel the pressure of having been with this book for a while and being on chapter 4. But you know what? I'm on chapter 4, which is better than it being under a pile of books, which would not be good, considering the pile of books or the other Chinese books that I want to get to at some point, including the Graded Reader that I want to get to at some point. But I feel like if I get at least a fair amount of these words under my belt, that'll be easier to start. And then that'll be a cohesive narrative. That I'm positive of. Anyway, there's a lot of material to go through, and I'm really anxious to learn and to feel like I'm learning. And I find words really, really overwhelming. Words and sentences without spaces. It's really, really challenging. Much more challenging than the components. Much more challenging than the radicals. Of course it is. This is real language, not just the parts that make up the language. So I'm really glad I spent those few months building up on the structure of the language, the components of the language, what the language is about. But now I've got to push forward with the words, because without words, you have no language. It's just so overwhelming how similar they look. But we have 26 letters in English, so I bet our words look way more similar than these characters do to each other. It's just crazy to me to think that people that come from this language can function in English, because I am just going the other direction, struggling like you wouldn't believe, just absolutely positively struggling. I am forever impressed by people who go the opposite direction. Forever impressed. All right. Yeah, so that's it. The power of review. I have to allow myself to move back and forth within the chapters that I've already done, as well as work on the chapter that I'm in. I don't have to do this in an incredibly logical fashion. I'm clearly not an incredibly logical person, so why start now? Go with whatever keeps me going and keeps me learning. As long as I'm learning words, then I'm progressing. So there you go, the power of review. Would be interesting to hear your comments on how much you consciously reviewed as you were learning whatever language you're working on. Do you build review into your studying, or do you just kind of encounter it in whatever authentic text you're using, texts or materials that you're using, or do you kind of forget and then have to go back and review every now and then with whatever materials that you used to learn in the first place? So it'd be interesting to hear what your version of review is and how often you consciously review. I imagine this is only really an issue to a certain point until you're using the language in enough form that just usage is review. I'm guessing. Is that true for Chinese? I don't know. This is so different than any language I've tried to learn before, and I didn't get fluent in any of those anyway. So this is all new ground for me. But having said that, it has never taken me 6 or 7 months to get to words from components of a language before. So this is all incredibly new. Anyway, looking forward to your suggestions, comments, feedback, stories of your own experiences, and all that kind of good stuff. All right, thank you, Satchin.